Welcome back to 8 Spotlight, where we shine a light on visionary founders from the 8 Capital and Y Combinator ecosystem. I'm Samantha, and today we're diving into a story that captures the essence of what it means to build infrastructure for a billion people. My guest is Sanjay Mandava, co-founder and CEO of Landeed, a YC-backed startup transforming how property data, title verification, and real estate transactions work in India. From bank partnerships and government integrations to AI-powered title reports and even plans for a title insurance product. Sanjay and his team are tackling one of India's most deeply entrenched challenges: how to make property ownership transparent, trustworthy, and fast in a market where 66% of court cases involve land disputes. This is a story about ambition, execution, and bringing trust to one of the world's most complex systems. So, okay, thank you, Sanjay, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, okay, I want to start at the beginning. Sanjay, before Landeed, what drew you to this particular problem? Why property?
Yeah, so my journey is I didn't grow up in India, but my parents were both doctors in US, and they basically thought the healthcare in India was terrible. So essentially, both of them wanted to come back and start hospitals and or healthcare units in India. So as part of that, they bought land parcels around some of the major cities in India. And, I never envisioned that I'd end up back here. But unfortunately, my father passed away. And as the oldest son, you end up having to kind of take these responsibilities. It's good. I mean, it made me into a better man. So I learned quickly. And I think in India, what tends to happen, if you don't take care of your property, somebody else will. And we had some politicians and various people try to encroach upon our land holdings in India. And long story short, that's how I got involved. Back in the day when I was working, I thought I was a shit, so I'm going to come to India and solve it. But I would say that I think I was sufficiently naive. So that helped me came back. And once I get involved in a problem, I don't like leaving them halfway. And so that's kind of what led me into discovering how this entire system works and build a Landeed.
When you say you were sufficiently naive, in what ways do you think you were sufficiently naive?
I don't know if YC or somewhere I hear this, that if people are too much of an expert and they want to innovate, they see too many roadblocks about how you can innovate versus actually just getting down to work. I like to go from bottom up. I used to work at a hedge fund, an activist hedge fund. And in order to check corporate governance or how companies are run, I used to go down to the store level to find out if a retailer, for instance, was accurately reflecting in consumer behavior what they were showing on their financial statements, how they looked at product placements within the store, how they went about stocking SKUs and all of this. And I think I like to understand things from the ground up rather than reading some report by a management consultant or some other report and taking that as the core truth. So I think I didn't understand what it meant to have land encroachment when I first came here. What I mean by that is we take for granted property security in US because we have title insurance, or even if you're in Western Europe, the idea that you can own a house and if you go on a vacation, somebody can come in and start squatting in it and say that it's theirs. And then you have to go to the court. Like, this is not something that occurs naturally in our brain, right? So obviously I didn't know about this. And there's not a lot of literature about how this happens and how to solve it, why this happens, predominantly because the types of people that were involved in India in doing this. So I think in that aspect, I didn't understand the gravity and the scale of the problem. I just had a very personalized approach to it. So by the time I came in, I still didn't understand. I started researching. And the deeper I got into it is when I truly understood how large it is. But by then I was too invested, and I think it helps to have some quick early wins, meaning, like, to be honest, once you understand that if you have a very personal problem like this in India, it's not merit that wins at all times. Sometimes you need to have brute force and determination and just plain will and take the approach that whatever this problem is, I'm going to attack it from whichever way that it takes to make sure that I win. And I think that's what I understood. And I won early enough by doing things my own way for me to not listen to popular convention ways about how this is supposed to be done. I think being stubborn, in this case probably helped. Or maybe I was just stupid, but either way.
So, when you say that you did things your own way, what do you
Yeah.
mean by that?
I mean, if a politician comes over and tries to take over your land in India, the natural thing to do is try to go and compromise. For me, I had this principles, especially working in an activist hedge fund, that there are some things I won't compromise on. And, if it means showing force and that's what you have to do, I was willing to do that versus compromising, because the way that I looked at it at that point in time, and I still remember, and I still, when I have customers that go through this, I try to think the same way, which is I look at it as a form of economic terrorism. And you don't negotiate with terrorists because that only empowers them. And so either I win or I'll take a loss, but I won't compromise. And I think that's what probably helped in that situation. I did not compromise. I did not go to other people for help. I didn't trust the institutions around me. I decided that I needed to handle this on my own. And I understood that quite quickly, and I think that helped.
Interesting. Okay. So you've said that your biggest competitor isn't another startup, it's the offline market. What does that mean in practice?
Yeah. So India in real estate, particularly in India, is a very hyper-local market. Meaning, let's say in every country there's brokers involved, real estate agents involved. But what you'll see is somebody that's very good at selling houses or buildings, even in US, let's say in North Carolina or Raleigh, is not just as good at and cannot sell houses in Chicago. They become very personalized and hyper-local to that market. And in India, when institutions don't have trust in any country, actually, you tend to rely on people that you know. Like you tend to rely on the community around you. In India, it could take on various forms. It could take on religious grounds, it could be on caste, it could be on language, it could be on area. And so everything about real estate in India is very hyper local, and it's a lot based on trust of people. And so when you're looking at even today in US, right? If you wanted to go buy a house, you're not going to go to Zillow and just click buy. You're going to do your own research. You're going to go down, do a house visit and all that. So in the documentation space, people didn't have enough trust to say that I'm going to get these documents from an online source. So they would go to a lawyer, or they would go to some broker, or they would go to these government facilities to go and get these documents. Ask, okay, why wouldn't I just go to the government or something like that? I think the explanation that I give is you can think of, obviously there's police that are responsible for protection, but then there's a reason people also have bodyguards. So when you look at the government, I say they're like the police. When you look at Landed, I say they're like your personal bodyguard. It's customized, personalized towards your need. And police is free. I mean, you pay taxes, but it's free. But there's a reason people pay additional money for bodyguards. I'm your bodyguard. So in that sense, a lot of our market hasn't been digitized when we first came. And so people were not used to getting these online, didn't have enough trust in the companies that built them to procure them from online. And the companies that did serve did not take seriously this problem. They did not think beyond just documentation. They thought it was about making money off ads or, charging per document. For me, I looked at a document and I saw that it was an intent to do something for the customer. His journey didn't start, his journey didn't end at a document. A document is only a representation of where he is in his journey. So I tried to help him complete his entire journey instead of making us seem like a document procurement platform. And so that's what I mean in that sense. So a lot of the market was offline. It still is. We're the largest in the online space by far, maybe 10x larger than somebody in second or third. But I want the people to get used to doing this in the online space in a secure, trustworthy environment, and not thinking that the default trust is some broker that they know.
So, how do you go about building that trust?
Yeah, first thing is we didn't, cluster the entire app with ads. And second is we are, and this is stated within our founding principles, we actually released a document about how we deal with data from our customers, which is fully anonymized and locally stored. We also vow to never sell data. Maybe other companies can say the same thing, but we put it out on paper for people to read. We call it the Citizen Charter. And I'm pretty like we were very explicit in saying that, look, we're not a replacement. We are a bridge between the citizen and the government. We are not a prop tech. We are not fintech. We are civ tech. The way that I look at it is everything that we're doing today is about how to build better cities in India. So when people ask me about my vision, what it is that we want to do and how we build that trust, I look at YC as a role model, meaning that before YC, founders had a lot of information asymmetry between them and their counterparty, which is the VCs. YC kind of made that more even playing field. But from a founder perspective, what YC does is you go to YC and you say you want to launch a company and they help you do that. I want somebody to be able to come to me and say, I want to launch a city, a theme city, right? And I want us to be software and operating system out of the box where you can plug and play and roll out a city. Because the type of documentation and the way we pull things, we literally see how entire cities across India are operating through their transaction. And I know what city is doing best in what segment. And if I'm able to productize it, operationalize it, digitize it, you could simply come to me and I can set up a titling system, which is a foundation for how you launch cities. Yeah. And I guess like in what we say today is don't think about it as some document property. Like the way that we think about trust is we have a simple statement that we say is, you know how you have a blue tick mark on a social media profile? I want to be
Sure.
your blue tick mark for your property.
I like that. Okay, so in your Q1 letter, you mentioned creating war rooms, pushing sales founder first, and ignoring popularity contests to focus on execution. What did that phase teach you as a founder?
Yeah. So I think my previous startup, I was in logistics, and I think I focused a lot on product to the extent that I thought, you know, the Silicon Valley notion of oh shit, you get the best product, you're gonna win the market. But then I also had some real events where, uh, like, it's not popular for a young woman even today in India to come and join a logistics company. It's not their natural track. So a weird story that I have to say is that like when a young woman once joined our company, very talented woman, she studied in US, went to Berkeley, came here, and all of that. On her first day of office, her dad and her brother came to make sure it was a legitimate company, sure that's real, because Indians weren't super used to startups doing well, and I think startups still don't have such a great notion out in the market. And so I realized that look, if we had done more trust building about our brand and about our company, maybe that's not something we would have faced. And one thing we try to do is like more men that you have inside the company and the more men you will continue to get, the more difficult it becomes to hire women later. Like somebody doesn't want to come to a company with 98 dudes and then two women, right? And that's a reality. So that's just from a quantitative aspect. But the other side about it is I think when I'm not able to get those women into the company, I lose intellectual diversity. Like a lot of culture flows from the founder down, and it's good to have different perspectives and for people to lean in on different types of personalities and characters within the company because everybody's different. And so I think you never want to exclude any sort of whether it's gender, whether it's religion, whether it's community or nationality, you know, from your hiring because of where you've hired in the past. And I think in that aspect we do very well because my two co-founders and I didn't study or work in India first. So this is something we tell the people that every single one of them is in the company today, not because I knew them through family or I knew them through college or I knew them through work colleagues. They're here because they're the best at what they do, and every single position is merit based. So that's a culture we want to continue, and we want to be very inclusionary, not in terms of like your opinions, personal opinions, that's out of work, but when you come to work, we win. And so we're here to win. Every other shit, you take it outside the house, but I want different perspectives on how to win. So that's kind of how we looked at why it was important to market. And I didn't do that in Golori enough. And so I said, I took it as a challenge this time and said, you know, this is a consumer led brand. I want consumers to have trust. And, you know, and people join early stage startups not because we have a brand, but because they trust the founders. So I said, I'm going to be a bit more explicit about how I am out there, but I also don't enjoy it. It's something that I learned. You know, if you go back and look, Golori had no marketing whatsoever, but it's something I learned and I want to do better, but I don't want to go overboard. I'm not an influencer. I'm a fucking founder. I built. So that's what I meant.
What was the lowest point in building Landeed and what gave you conviction to keep going?
Lowest point at Landeed was probably at the beginning itself. Meaning, you know, I ran my previous startup, I think for almost 6 or 7 years. Didn't give up. Very lean budget. Every month for maybe, you know, 2.5 years, I was worried about making payroll every single month. You know, I would basically turn into accounts receivable because I'd have to go after clients to say, pay me to run payroll. Because in India, I think it's a country with the worst credit cycles in the world. I still think it's a big hindrance for India's development that companies don't take seriously their obligations to pay vendors on time. And so I remember that entire episode. And so when Landeed started, we didn't charge money at first to run searches. And I remember when we put up a paywall and the first payment came in when we were sleeping. So that felt magical. And at the same time, you look back and then the way that Landeed grew, it felt like I wasn't pushing the boulder up the hill. Like it felt like it was rolling on its own and I was trying to like grab hold on it, just how it was growing. And so I think it's very painful when you spend 6 years on a business. I worked my ass off on that one. So in some respects, Landeed seemed like easy mode compared to my previous startup. So I think that was a little bittersweet, and I think fully letting go of the previous business and not thinking about it, it's actually related to my previous startup probably more than Landeed. But Landeed for me has always been just the next goal and target. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's something to be congratulated on that you were able to move forward from that experience and create something like Landeed. Okay, so for those hearing about Landeed for the first time, walk us through what the platform actually does today.
So we say Landed is the most, fastest and most comprehensive property title search engine in India. What that means is, so in India, when you want to verify a property, in US, we have something called title insurance. So if you purchase a property and you take a mortgage on it, you must purchase title insurance. So if there was ever a dispute on the ownership or title strength, the insurance company has you. And because the title insurer is insuring, it also does the pre-research on whether the title is clean. And in UK and Singapore, they have something called conclusive titling. Basically, they are state-backed titles. So what I mean is, let's say, Samantha, you're selling me a house. Basically, when you're selling me a house, the UK government department will sit in between and say, look, Samantha, who is selling her house, is actually the owner of the house. So when I purchase that house, I get a single title deed giving me ownership. In India, what happens is India has something called presumptive ownership. What that means is, look, I'm going to buy a property from Samantha. They say, look, Sanjay, I have no responsibility on whether Samantha is the owner of the property or not. It's upon you to do the due diligence on whether Samantha owns a property. So, because I have to do the due diligence, there is no single department that gives a single title deed. So, basically, I have to go to all the departments that are pertaining to this property to bring evidence that that we are the owners of the property. So that could mean electricity bill, that could mean water bill, that could mean property tax. So property tax is a different department, a sale deed is a different department. So think of it as like a download completion bar. You can only say that I have title strength, never conclusively that it's yours. So every single form of document that shows that you have ownership over this property is important, right? And so the way that I explain to my VCs in San Francisco is like, look, imagine, Samantha, you have a super nice car. You're going out of town for 2 months or 2 weeks, and you say, Sanjay, you want to borrow the car? Just pay for the fuel, whatever, right? So I borrow your car, take it for a spin. I fuel it up, maybe do some repair work. I take those bills and I say this car is mine. I go to the court and say, look, why would I pay fuel for this car if it's not mine? And now the owner has to come to the court and say, look, man, I have all this other evidence that shows that I'm the owner of the car. And this is how stuff is done. So that's why we brought all these departments together that pertain to property documents from various parts of the country into a single interface. And nobody has really quite done that.
That's crazy. I don't think I quite understood the breadth of what you guys were doing until now. Intellectually understood it, but like hearing you describe it, that's actually insane.
Yeah. I think on a daily basis today, we interface with nearly 128 different departments throughout the country.
Government departments.
Government departments, yeah.
Good for you. I know firsthand that the government in India can be very filled with red tape and hard to communicate with. So that is truly a feat. So you've gone from 1 million monthly searches in Q4 to nearly 5 million in Q1.
Yeah.
That's incredible scale. What's
Yep.
driving that growth?
So here, the interesting part about this is I think we started with some core documents. And like I said, we never looked at it as a document retrieval platform. I think nobody says, yeah, I really want that document. They're trying to do something with that document, whether that's getting a loan or whether they're buying or selling the property. So we looked at it as a customer journey. And what we realized is as you keep adding more documents, the same users get more value by being on the platform. And additional users come in and see that there are stuff here that there isn't anywhere else. And so basically, instead of them logging into 6 different, portals, they all come to us. And we're the only one that cover 24 states in India. So nobody else has that breadth. So it's a diversity of people coming in for diversity of documents. And as more people come in and they have more requests, we keep adding more documents. So it becomes like a, kind of like a very virtuous cycle of people coming in, getting increasing value the longer they stay on the platform. And what happens is real estate is naturally multiplayer. So you're not getting a document just for yourself. There's always obviously another counterparty that's involved. So you share a document with your counterparty. The counterparty goes and checks on the document. He's now onto the Landeed platform, who then again starts sending more documents, right? Basically, the other thing that happens is government infrastructure is, first of all, it's free. So we shouldn't be expecting really high quality infrastructure. Their job is to just serve a customer that wants a document at a low cost and a low price. And that's great that India is doing that. I think what we say is for our people, like for enterprise people, that is not sufficient, right? The way that I explain it is, sure, I could run a company using WhatsApp groups, but there's a reason I run Slack, right? So, for enterprise users that are heavy users that have been used to this, they now have a platform where they can come in and they don't have to go to all these different sources, and they have a one-stop shop. And so our top users contribute to 80% of the searches. And so we keep attracting power users because we're really the only ones in the market that can do this. And we're the only ones that are multi-platforming. We have both web and app. And so actually you can order through WhatsApp as well. And now we have something called voice AI. So people might not understand documents, but they understand what they want to do. So you go and talk to Terra, which is our voice AI, and you say what you want, and it pulls up the document and gives it to you. Like the first thing to test was like, I don't know if I asked my friends even in US, like, when was the last time you paid for something, actually transacted using voice AI? And they're like, we haven't done it yet. And I'm like, we're doing that in India. And to get there, I remember like the challenges. I wanted GPUs. I couldn't even get GPUs in India. So I had to go to different sources, built our own GPU infrastructure in-house, hired our AI ML team. And that's actually what I raised funds for at the beginning of this year. Not for like growth capital, but I wanted to have separate allocated, dedicated capital to our AI ML work. And so these are just some of the things that kind of propel different ways to search that nobody else has. And then the breadth and the width at which we operate, I think just keeps on bringing more people at an accelerating pace.
Very cool. So you've mentioned Landeed Bill Pay,
Yeah.
some of that through voice AI.
Yeah.
And so that allows users to pay property tax, electricity, and association bills directly. How did that feature come about, and how does it tie back into ownership verification?
Yeah, people didn't think, they're like, why the hell are they doing payments? It's a very competitive space and all of that. Really, I don't think about competition. I think about my like user and what they need. And what I mean by that is in India, just as in US or anywhere else really, like I said, paying property tax and electricity bill is a form of title strength in India. It's an evidence that you own property, which is actually right within our ballpark of things that we do. So when you come in, you bought a property, and to maintain security over that property, we're trying to encourage good behavior of making property tax payments, of making electricity payments on time. And all of this gets stored in a central folder for you in the app. We call it our DigiLocker. Now, when you want to go at essentially what the other core thing that we realized is none of the property owners in India keep all their documents up to date because there are so many departments until the point of transaction comes. And so they clear all their pending dues at that point in time. And we realize the big problem is not that they don't want to pay. It's just that they don't want to go to all these multiple different places, multiple departments to go make those payments and then store. So we said if we brought all of them together under one roof, maybe we could encourage good behavior. And that's actually what we're seeing. And so they're making payments. It's still a small part of our business, but we don't do any marketing for it, and it's just growing organically. So I'm just glad to fill a customer need. And I'm not saying that we're going to be the biggest payments platform or anything like that in India, but I think it's a core part of our work.
Yeah, because that's not really your goal.
Yeah.
Your goal is something else, and that ties in to that.
Yeah, property security, that's all.
So you now have separate consumer and enterprise divisions. What drove that decision, and how has it changed your focus?
I think there's a lot of people that do this for enterprise, like title diligence and basically helping out banks check out property titles and their strength before they give out home loans or loans against properties. And they weren't even really within our sight when we first started. We were still focused on consumer. And so when we would keep getting these inbounds from banks, we'd say, hey, we're not serving enterprise right now. We're focused on consumer. I didn't want to get defocused. I just wanted to increase the number of states we cover first. Finally, one of the banks is like, look, we really want you. We're willing to pay. And they gave a clear economics. So basically what we told them was like, look, I don't have a finished product for you, but what you can think of us as is we're like Lego. I have all the pieces that you need. You tell me what pieces that you want. And as long as it's not too much work for us, but you're willing to pay, we'll do it. And so then we do something, we kind of borrow from Palantir model. We do forward deployed engineers into organizations because I want to learn how these orgs work. So we don't say off the shelf, you get this product. I actually send my engineering and product team into their org and we sit down with them for the first week to learn how they operate. So basically my premise is if you have to teach them how it works, they're not going to stay on. It'll always be an issue. I want our work to kind of disappear into their work. I don't want them to think it's a separate platform, right? So we do our best to tie into their existing workflow instead of making them do additional work to use our platform. To really do that, you just need to sit by them for an entire day and observe, not comment, not say you can do this better, not say we're better. I just want to learn from you. And it's been very helpful for me to do that. And a lot of companies, I think, in India probably don't do that. But we also have to be very clear to them that we don't do reports. And like JLL or these brokerages will produce these reports or they want these analytics and all of this. And our point is very simple. If I sell reports, I'm a services company and that'll take its own focus. I know it can be free money, but it also defocuses me. Because I know as a founder, whatever I start charging for, I will pay attention to. And I'm very careful about what I pay attention to. So as long as the client agrees to that framework, and I'll be honest, like unless your product was really good, they won't agree to you dictating, right? And anything really. So we know we have a very special product. We know we have a unique product. And so that's when we started saying, okay, this worked for this bank. Let's see if we can replicate it. And then it started working with other ones. And so then I was like constantly pulling resources from the consumer team, which was taking away focus from there and also here. So I said, we have to have a dedicated focus with its own product team, with all of that. And so we hired and separated, and things have become much better even for me to manage. So they have their own go to market motions, right?
You recently wrote that AI in Indian real estate isn't hype, it's necessity. Why?
So basically, how things have been done in India, and part of the reason why the litigation rate is so high is in India, because you don't have these single title deeds. In US, you have escrow accounts. So basically, you put down a deposit before you buy a house, and then you go through the entire verification, and then the final payment is done. In India, there's really not this escrow mechanism. So people do these two sets of agreements usually, meaning there's an agreement for sale, and then which is basically I have interest and I'm giving you a deposit, and then they have a sale agreement, sale deed agreement. So two agreement. In between, they're doing the verification. Because the verification involves so many departments, that process can take anywhere from 2 to 6 months. When it takes 2 to 6 months, and you know this in any transaction, Samantha, whether it's a founder or enterprise deal or a founder VC deal, the longer something is going to take, the more likely it's about to fall apart, right? And so in these 2 to 6 months, maybe market conditions change. And so this guy will make up some excuse about title strength not being up to the level, or anything can happen. And so this leads to a lot of disputes between people. Now, why does it take 2 to 6 months? So for a lawyer, because there's no title insurance in India and the government doesn't verify, people in India do something called legal opinions, which is you go to a lawyer to check the entire title parentage of the property to make sure that the title is clean from the seller. Well, in those 2 months, majority of the lawyer's time is not going into drafting that legal opinion. It's going towards running around and collecting these documents, right? Now, we built India's fastest document procurement. So that 2 to 6 months can be turned into 8 minutes. So basically, because we have so much data on how it needs to be done, and we have our own internal legal firm, basically we have this feedback loop. And our own legal firm, YC says dog fooding. Basically, we test our product on our own people before we give it to the market because we have our own team, right? So basically, what we're saying is that entire process can be compressed into, 8 minutes or 12 minutes with our system. You don't need to have title insurance, and you don't need to have conclusive titling. AI has provided a third way to verify property titles in a very short amount of time. So we don't need to wait for regulation for India to change its legislation on conclusive titling. And we don't need to wait for regulators to allow title insurance to operate in India. AI has created an entirely different way to verify titles properly without needing the others too, which is how the world has worked for the past 3 centuries or no. So that's why I say AI is super powerful for this. If I was in the listings business, I wouldn't say it's as powerful.
Let's talk about your new product, AI TSR, the AI-driven title search and report tool. How does it actually work?
So all these documents are retrieved from our system and fed to our AI model, which then goes through entire documentation set and it's learned from the best practices of how title opinions look because it has tons of training data. And we have our own GPU and inference, and we have our own legal firm who then back checks this entire. So we have our own data ingestion pipeline, we have our own hardware and infra, and then we have our dedicated engineering team and our own legal team. So all of these led to a very fast feedback loop on how to create the perfect legal opinion. So basically, every time legal, a property comes to us for diligence, we have AI generate one. We don't let the lawyer see, and we have the lawyer generate one. And so that's how the system has become better. And so banks keep giving us volume. So I have volume to keep training the model on and data set. My lawyers keep making the system better, and the AI just keeps churning out reports.
So you've achieved around 90% accuracy in English and 70% in Indian vernacular languages. That's pretty impressive. What are the hardest technical challenges in making AI understand property documents in India?
OCR by far. So here's an interesting thing. The most challenging part is not having, enough compute or having talent or hardware, which all of us were lucky and to have great investors like you guys to give us the ammunition to do it. But so banks have financial institutions in India have these 2 time windows, which they consider for checking legal or title search reports. It's a 13 or a 30-year window. Well, the fact of the matter is, no document in India by any state or any department has been digitized going back 30 years. And so, if in some states, some of these documents are handwritten and in old vernacular languages, right? So in India, I'm sure you know, we have multiple, I think we have 12 major languages. So if I'm building a national scale company, having a vernacular OCR is important. That's level one. But having an OCR that can read handwritten text from 1960 Tamil or 1950 Urdu, that is not something that OpenAI or any of these guys are going to focus on because they have other priorities. Like, why, for what business is a 1950 handwritten document important to look at right now? Right? But these are very important to us because I have to look at the lineage of the property, meaning I have to look at how the current owner got its possession going back 40, 50, 60 years. So these documents come in handwritten and nobody had built that model. So we had to build kind of our own models and using open source and then refining them to be able to do this. And so that was a really, really difficult engineering task, and nobody really has built it. And we don't see why somebody would kind of build it in the near future. And so that was really difficult for us. And we were surprised that nobody wanted to do it. And I'm not being critical, but I also don't think like foundational AI companies in India have done a great job of, the market. I don't know why we suffer at that because China has DeepSeek, US has its own models, and we're struggling here. So, and for OpenAI or DeepSeek or any of these companies, 1850 Tamil vernacular, document OCR is not really a top of their priorities amongst other things.
Yeah, of course. That's actually wild that you had to build that. You described this vision of a blue tick for property titles, almost like instant verification for land ownership. How close are we to that reality?
Closer in some states than others, closer in some transactions than others. So if you told me that I only want to verify ownership for this property going back 13 years, in most states we're already there. I can do that. Now, if you ask me for a 60-year window, I would say probably we're 3/4 away or so on that. And it's not because we haven't built the pipeline or the tech. It again goes back to that OCR thing that I was talking to you about. So I wouldn't feel comfortable giving blue tick for something with 70% accuracy in this business, right? I want to be close to like 96, 97, 98, 99, that kind of range beyond doubt. And so in that respect, I think we're quite close, particularly in the southern states and western states, which are the more economically vibrant parts of India. I remember one of the first states I went. So we have this thing we have a playbook and it has our company like principles. And one of the principles that we have is do hard things and do them well. And you try to lead by example. So one of the first things I did, again, maybe stupid, but we picked the only state in India that had 0% digitization for me to go speak with the government. That was Meghalaya. And all these documents are handwritten, and some of the maps are actually hand drawn by the local leader. So if you ask me, am I close in Meghalaya? I'd say hell no, right? So yeah, that's how I would say it. Depends.
What's the opportunity for a title insurance like product in India?
I think we can do it even today. I think it's very important how you package it. So, title insurance exists in India, but only for real estate developers. So, what I mean by that is if a private equity firm wants to invest, they tell these in real estate developers to go buy it. Real estate developers are like, hell, this is useless because I speak to them. But hey, the American dude wants it, so why not? That's actually how it happens, right? So I come from buy side. So sometimes we used to make fun of management consultants. We had to work with some of them for some research, but we deploy our own capital at a hedge fund, right? Or a VC, you know, whereas management consulting guy advises. And so I remember when I was young asking my boss, like, yo, what's happening? He's like, Sanjay, you need to understand that people are now taking management consultants only because they think they can get help, but they want to have a finger to point at if something goes wrong, right? So hey, I took this guy's advice and it didn't work. See, it was backed by McKinsey or Bain. And actually, to some extent, American companies have their own compliance requirements. And I say the same thing about like when people say, hey, we want to build green buildings in India and all of this, I'm like, yeah, it works for Amazon because they want to show that on to their investors in America. But amongst the things India has to do to improve its livelihood in its cities, I wouldn't say green buildings are at the very top of India's to-do list, right? People don't have clean air and sanitation and water and proper zoning. You got a hut with a skyscraper right next to it. Like you
Yeah.
think green buildings are so I think sometimes the culture gets imported without understanding the realities. So in that aspect, I think it's a little bit concerning. But the title insurance like product, you never know how regulation can change in India.
Regulations shift in India constantly. How do you manage that? How do you stay nimble when policies shift mid-quarter?
Stay close to them. It's very important. I think as a startup, we understood this early. We hired government affairs very early into our business. A lot of startups in India hire these sorts of people to have government kind of stay out of their way or not, have their business disrupted by some regulation. We said we're going to take a different way. I want to partner with the government. They're my customer. So I'm going to work early with them and I'm going to work with them when I'm young. I'm going to work with them as they mature, build those relationships, and I want to help them. Ultimately, right, like the government in this sense is a lot like the foundation model. As they get better, your work that you build on top also can get better. So if the government does better, I also get better. And the way that we explain to them is like, look, I can build the best light bulb in India, but if the power plant is terrible, it doesn't matter, right? So, and the government is a power plant. So, if you want to build a good light bulb, make sure that the power plant is working and there's regular electricity. So, we work very closely with them across multiple states. We engage with them. We have a separate department that handles them. We listen to their concerns. We address them quickly. And we work hand in glove with them to make sure that we give the best experience to the customer. The government knows what it's doing. They want to provide a low cost way of helping customers. I'm on the other side. Never come to me if you want the cheapest of anything. I am not. And you should be prepared to pay. And I'm not I'm not hiding it. We need investments to survive, right? But we need customers to pay for us if we want to keep innovating. So I want to invert it. I want innovation to come from customer funds. I want survival, temporarily to come from VCs. I don't want survival to come from the customers and use VCs money to invest it. So that's the way I kind of look at it.
What would you tell other founders trying to tackle India scale infrastructure?
There's probably founders better than me that you should speak with. I think, yeah, definitely. Like I'm also learning, right? Most of the times when I talk to these founders, I'm also trying to learn from them on what it is that I'm not good at. I'm very lucky to have my two co-founders. We worked together now for almost 8 years, across same founders as my previous YC startup. I would say preserving important co-founder relationships. Co-founder relationships is very important, but I think that doesn't show in the way that you guys agree. That shows in the way that you guys disagree. So I think I've disagreed with them enough times and been right enough times for them to respect the times that I disagree with them. And they also know that I don't do popularity or democracy. So there are some things that I'm very, very, I don't care if 98% of the company disagrees. But if I believe that it's in the best interest of the customer and the company for the long term, I will say that this has to be done. And both of my co founders can disagree, and they do. But when I finally make that decision, they respect it. And so I don't know if that respect was there or earned. I'm sure it's a mix of both. But I think it's very important to have that co founder. Like, even the way that I hire, I used to make this calculation in my head that the most amount of time I spent recruiting is my co-founders, and most amount of value has come from these two people. And every additional person I hire means I get to spend less time with these people. So unless that additional hire that I have to spend time with creates more value than I would lose by spending time with them, I will not make that hire. And that means every hire that I make has to be better than me, and I have to be able to learn from them. That's the first sign that I look for. Like, am I learning from these people? So everything that I do stems from my co-founder relationship. So without them, I'd probably have less restrictions about how I behave and act in the market. There's a balance. Like, hey, if I did this, would John or ZJ, my co-founders, would they have something to say? So it's very important for me that I have that. And I think that keeps me sane. But they also respect that, I'm this sort of person. Sometimes I'll be aggressive to get things done. And they know that. They know it's not emotional, that I put the company first above everything. So as long as they understand that, then I think, yeah, I would say co-founder relationships. And second thing is, never start India from the computer. Always start from the ground up. The real India is not in Bangalore or Gurgaon or Hyderabad. It is not in the places where we hang out as founders. It is on the streets. Like, we have a saying inside the company, and I think I wrote that in the investor letter as well. Glass, steel, and AC are the ultimate anesthetics for founders in India. Our business is real estate more than other businesses. But irrespective of any business in India, you have to be willing to go down to the ground. You have to be willing to like involve yourself in each one of these granular processes to understand every single part of your value chain. And when VCs say, hey, you should delegate, I'm like, fuck that. Like, you know, I am like, for me, I am the voice of the customer inside my company. And I never want to move away from product. No matter what else I have to like sacrifice, the stuff that my company produces for my people is very, very personal to me. I read every single one of my reviews. I make sure I respond to every single one of my customer queries at any time. In the metadata, in the analytics, you don't understand your customer's pain point. So sometimes going down to the village, sometimes going down to the field, sometimes going down to the government office. The way I learned to build this business is because it was taught in class or because I read a McKinsey report. It's because when I had encroachment, I went to each one of these government offices myself and understood that if a person like me that has resources and privileges went through what I did, I can only imagine how it is for the rest of the people. And, I'm fucking lucky, right? Sperm lottery, born to the right family at the right time at the right place. I got a lot of things going for me. So if it's difficult for me, I can only imagine for the other people. So, and I wouldn't have understood that if I didn't go there, if I didn't leave my house, if I didn't leave my office, if I didn't leave the AC. And that's how government operates.
I think that's very astute. Finally, what will success look like when every property in India has that blue tick mark of verification?
Then Africa. So there's a book by this author called DeSoto, and he talks about property titling. And the common belief around the world today that America and UK develop good property records after they become a developed country. That's fundamentally untrue.
Sorry, I'm just processing that. Sanjay, thank you for joining us on 8 Spotlight. Your journey is, yeah, of course. Happy to have you here. Your journey is such a perfect example of what happens when ambition meets execution and when a founder chooses to build something essential rather than easy. For our listeners, you can learn more about Landeed at landeed.com. Check out their profile on LinkedIn and follow Sanjay on LinkedIn. Stay tuned for more founder stories from 8 Capital's growing family of over 200 YC startups right here on 8 Spotlight. Thanks again.